Right, good morning everybody. Here we are. Hi Josh. Hi Stelly. How's it going? Alright. Tired. Just woke up. Oh, there's Graham. Hi Graham. Right, what's happening today? Well, I'm here. Alarms are going. Oh, what was that? Chaos. Pop that there. Get my distractions out of the way. Should never have your mobile phone in the studio, by the way. Going dandy. Oh, well, that's good. So my guitar playing has hit a bit of a plateau, interestingly enough. I've got like tons of ideas that I want to do, and I've been doing them, and desperately, frantically trying to get all this stuff, like the new 2-1-2 stuff into my playing, chromaticism into my playing. And then I started, like, the chromatic thing's good, that was working, starting to get bored with that, and then just very small incremental movements on that, and it wasn't moving as quick as I wanted. So then I did something ridiculous where I didn't play quite as much as I would normally do, as in practice, as in maintenance practice on my technique, and then I started getting into watching stuff about Alan Holdsworth and people who've come up, like, theorized his approach to guitar playing, which is absolutely fascinating. And of course, like, one of the things that really pricked my interest was Alan Holdsworth, one of his influences, which was Olivier Messiaen, who invented the Messiaen scale. Not that I'm ever going to use the Messiaen scale, but you can guess what then happened. A bit of time was spent faffing with Messiaen modes. And then I thought, oh God, why am I doing this? And then I've reversed out of that, luckily. But just out of interest, out of all the Messiaen scales, I mean, the reason I was doing it was to try and, like, have extra visualization on my chromaticism. If this makes any sense, tell me if it's getting a bit too technical, this. So, in other words, like, most of the time when I chromatically play, not all the notes are equal, all right? So, if I say we're in, favourite key of mine, E minor, and I want to land on the 5th of E minor, which is B, I might do something chromatic where I roll the notes down to that B note. So I'll roll from D, C sharp, C, and then land on the B, which is the note that's in tune. And you just try and fit all of that note grouping just as best as you can in whatever rhythmic time that you have available for that. So really those notes aren't equal. Maybe the D is equal, but certainly the other notes, the C sharp and the C is in tune, but it's the avoid note, are not equal because it's the B that I want to really hit. So not all the notes are equal, or like if I do that very jazzy kind of bebop thing where you're sliding from the E flat to the E, obviously the E flat isn't equal, nor is the F to F sharp, which would be the 9. So those notes are, like, unequal, but then I got interested in this concept of, like, okay, what happens when we have a scale that sounds very sort of outside, and then we approach things where all the notes are equal, and that's where my head just went and realised I'd, like, invested a load of time and not actually been strengthening the things that I have been working on. So, I've been adventuring about, but because I've really been enjoying finding out about new concepts, I thought, oh, well, what would be a good book for concepts and guitar and things like that? Now, I stumbled upon this. This is the Advancing Guitarist, Applying Guitar Concepts and Techniques by Mick Godric, who was a Berkeley He's not with us now, sadly, but he was a Berkeley lecturer. Didn't Messian have the synthesis? Oh God, is that meant to be a joke, Graham? Is this wit? Is this? Yes, he did. How about that? So I'm going to give this a go. See where this leads me. So I like the idea of this book because it's not a method book where you apparently have to go from the front to back. I can dive into this whenever I have one of my ridiculous missions that I want to go on. I don't know if it covers Messian though. I'll just have a look. Probably not. Allow me to look. But yes, you can kind of look up what you're into, and it'll give you some ideas, right? But the whole idea of this book is that it'll kind of tell you about the thing, but give you some ideas to explore it. So really, it's all about being self-led. However, you know, it's a little bit wordy and stuff, and you do have to be able to read a bit of music because you're gonna get, you know, hit with stuff like that. So the quarterly harmony, you know, that's something I'm into at the minute. Quartal harmony. That's been the latest sort of thing, but I think I've just had too many things on the go. I've had Messian scale, I've had quarterly harmony, I've had like the 2-1-2 thing where basically, I mean, I wouldn't care. Like a lot of these concepts are, you understand them straight away, but then it's like the physical application of it, which like takes a lot of time to build into your playing. And I've had multiple instances of these. Just adjust my headphones 2 seconds. I've had multiple instances of that situation probably happening all at the same time, which leads to overwhelm. But that's all right. I don't mind. Anybody else experience that on their instrument? Everything's going well. You get bored of yourself, and then you end up realizing that there are too many things to learn. And then you start trying to learn all of them at the same time, and it becomes absolute overwhelm. I'd be interested to know. Oh, breaking the place. Anyway, yes, overwhelm. So dealing with overwhelm. Which is another. Just try. Yeah, I mean, I'm not in pain. I'm having fun, but like, you know, I have to then start reining it in, you know, and like thinking, all right, well, what do we do? And I think we come down to the cross he had, right? Okay, I'm gonna have to check that. There's another thing I can get lost in now. So I haven't had overwhelm for a while, but I think it's just you know, the whole excitement of, I've really got into playing guitar the last sort of in particular the last year, but certainly the last 2 years has been a golden period for me playing, you know. And that actually came out of a slump because when I was coming out of the sort of I haven't been shredding in public since God knows how long. About the same length of time as Thomas actually. suddenly I had no time to prepare. I just had to start playing in front of everybody, which was good because it got me. It was a really good way to kind of test myself under pressure and kind of get up to fighting guitar fitness very, very quickly. So there was a bit of a spurt, and then I remember plateauing and then doing this exercise when I was getting coached just about this very thing about, you know, what do you do when you get bored of your playing and you're playing the same things all the time? And like actually, like one of the things is like when you're playing sort of things repetitively or little phrases and things like that, there's actually nothing wrong with them because you were playing them before. That's the first thing. So I think like one of the things we then tend to hate everything we're doing. Go right, that's it. Like everything's getting destroyed, and I'm gonna completely restart again. And that's not necessarily the right thing. You were playing these things, and they sounded perfectly fine at one point. So therefore, there must be something about that's okay. So actually starting from that point and kind of understanding what it is, describing it, and explaining what you're playing is the first step, so you fully understand what it is and why you're doing it. And then the next thing from that is then just to come up with like tons of ways, like splurging, of modifying those things and changing them and playing them backwards, playing them inversely, understanding the harmony, breaking it out in arpeggio, so there's like lots of ways you can reconfigure the licks that you're doing, trying to play it in different note groupings. And for me, like at that point there was where I ended up clearly finding where the deficit was for me to make the gains. I could keep going with alternate picking and getting really good with that and trying to push that technique, but it's a lot of work and just very small gains, really. And also it doesn't scientifically make sense for when you're doing certain things. Like if you're wanting to do sort of wide interval jumps or something, then kind of you could alternate pick it and you could give yourself a pat on the back for being a technical guitar picking genius, right? But apart from that, and it looking like good on Instagram, people going, wow, look at that. He's, his alternate picking and string skipping's amazing. Look how he's bouncing from that sixth to the first string. Really, it's not the most comfortable way to travel, and I like comfort. So really, for anything, or at least wherever I can do it, I'm going to use hybrid picking, which was the last sort of technical thing that I installed into my playing, to be fair. But I'm starting with that first because it's the first example that came to my head, So actually, like working with different techniques was the way that I kind of suddenly the fretboard explodes differently, and like everything that you were playing, you can do differently now, and that was the big gain. So actually just taking a step back and learning something new was a really good thing for me to do, and again, I spent a while through my career saying I'm not certain things, which is wrong. So if you're ever doing this, don't do it, right? And I do hear this with guitarists, right? So I'm an alternate picker, right? And that is it. And it's the swords in the stone, the line is drawn. I'm an alternate picker. Or even worse, because I kind of hooked onto this a bit. Like I'd heard a few places that Paul Gilbert, although you have to have inside picking because it's impossible, but predominantly it's like it was a bit like being left-handed and right-handed. I am an outside picker. So there's plenty of people who, the strongest picking motion is the outside. That's where they're more comfortable. How does the things? Right there, Mac. Right, sorry if you just come on. I'm just talking about guitar and expanding your playing and just a book I've got. So in short, actually there is no short. I'm just now lecturing away. So before I start then doing music. So yes, so where was I? Yeah, so to refresh my playing, I've realised that I would have to learn like lots of different techniques, and get out of this mindset of pigeonholing oneself. So, for example, the outside picking motion. I'm an outside picker, and that's how I approach things. And if I try and solve a problem, then I have to solve it with that outside picking motion. Actually, interesting enough, when you watch like Paul Gilbert, some things that he does actually, he'll do, especially a string skipping thing. You can watch his left hand motion, how it bounces at times, and that's because he's using multiple downstrokes to kind of get round an inside motion when he's string skipping. That's like one of the places you can see it, you know. So there's like a way that he'll compensate. But other things, like when he's doing that group of 6 run, there is inevitably an inside motion. But then you start getting into the Troy Grady thing, don't you? And then you realise actually an inside motion is quite achievable. You can have the two things, and that was quite a pivotal moment for me. So I think like developing an inside motion really, really helped me. In fact, more than helped me. So I had that for a bit. Then realised I needed more than that. And I wanted to be able to, I realised that what I wanted to do, the next development for me, when I think about it, to expand my guitar playing from that kind of outside picking with inside motion and how to refresh things, I wanted to be able to do odd note groupings, which would require rapid sort of successions of inside-outside motion. And be able to do it without having to think ridiculously for it and having to take a mental run up and jump. Okay, so because I noticed this, like there were certain runs I wanted to do, especially pentatonic stuff. You know, you've got like 3 notes on a string and 2 notes on a string. But I wanted to take it further. I wanted to do 3 notes, 2 notes, like any combination of notes, 4 notes, 2, then a 1 note. So how do you do that? Well, I mean, I started trying to do it like alternate picking, and it does kind of help. It's okay as practice, right? But I just thought, you know what? This is painful. I don't like that. And so then I realised, right, and I was like, oh, how do people like Joe Bonamassa, and how do those people do it? And then you realise actually that they're not alternate picking everything. You realise that they're doing like a little cheeky economy pick, like the Eric Johnson descending 5s, right? It's when you're picking something like that, just E minor pentatonic, G, E, D, B, and then A. And then when you land on A with a downstroke, and then to do the next grouping that'll start on the B string, it's down, down. So that's how they do it. So there's this little, everything's alternate picking, but there's a down, down to get to the next group of 5, and that's how it's done. Because they just do it so smooth, and there's no bouncing action, and the picking hand's really, really smooth. So I started doing that, and I thought, oh, that's good. And then that kind of worked itself in doing that convenient down, down whenever I got stuck. And then I thought, actually, I need to just explore this a little bit more. And then I realised, actually, economy picking could be the way to go. I think I must have watched a Troy Grady thing, because the reason I never did economy picking was actually, I had the Frank Gambale video when I was a kid, and I watched him play, and it was amazing. I thought, I want to do that. But I didn't really fully understand what he was talking about. And obviously I started the instruction video. And I'd have been really young. I mean, you're talking like 12 or something, 13. And then he's doing, so he's like doing, there's a thing where he does a G major scale. And I remember doing that, going, oh, well, that's doable. It's not too bad. But then he talked about being able to turn things round, and that if you've got an even number to keep everything purely economy picked, to turn a lick round, you had to have an even number of notes. So you either had to have 2 or 4 notes to then get back round again, which meant you either had to add notes to a scale that you didn't want, or you had to think of a note grouping in your head whilst you're making shit up, right? And I was just like, I'm not like this is like maths now, man. I don't want to be thinking about like, having to play 2 notes when I'm in the middle of a jam, right? Just to turn things, just to reverse, right? It's just too thinky. So I kind of canned that, and then just like did sweep picking. And then I realised, the Troy Grady stuff, that actually this is like ridiculous. All you have to do, right, is just combine both economy picking and alternate picking. So it's a bit of an upgraded version what I do, from the Joe Bonamassa and adding in the Frank Gambale thing, because like what I do is I combine the two techniques, too thinky, yeah. But you don't want to be too thinky, Josh, because like what we've got to think about is flow, which is another thing I'll talk about, because this is about. I mean, as well as watching me make music, these morning shows, broadcasts, are about primarily these days about talking about these issues. Although we are making music, and the track I was working on yesterday has come out really good. So I'm really pleased with that. I'm going to put an epic guitar solo on it, which I'll do on a live, with alternate and economy picking, probably. I'll use every technique, now I've said this. So, yeah, too thinky. And actually, the reason I'm learning all these techniques is to stop me from thinking. That's the whole thing, You don't want to be thinking when you're playing. You just want to be flowing, Yeah, flowing, baby. That's what we're doing. So you combine the two things. So then it suddenly occurred to me, right? Because it's just like these things, right? When you sit and work out what to do, it's like an engineering problem, isn't it? Especially when you watch Troy Grady, what he does and how he approaches things in that very, very analytical, scientific way, So I think, I combined the two things. I combined the two things together, economy picking and alternate picking. And that was the key. And that really kind of massively helped me out. But the only problem is, right, I had to learn to economy pick. And that meant completely changing everything. It meant stopping doing alternate picking as much as I was doing it, and then concentrating on having most of the stuff I was doing, this economy picking, because I just wanted this smooth style of playing, okay, and without thinking and just flowing, not using tons of energy, because I just want to just relax. But also, I want the flow, have no effort when I'm playing, but sound like it's intense, like it's really like in your face, and I'm picking every note really hard. And I was like, oh God, how do you do that? And then I realised you start getting into planting and note displacement, which is two other things, right? By the way, if anybody is interested in a guitar lesson, right, on this, you can book me. I mean, I've got a couple of hours free, potentially, in the week, where we can, so if you fancy a guitar lesson and you want, like, to sit and me help you go through expanding your technique on this, then I can certainly do that, because I've been through it. And it's still fresh in my head, what I went through. In fact, I don't think I'll ever forget the experience. But for those who I teach, the experience, having me got that lived experience of doing these things, I can help you when you learn it, make it less painful, and primarily, actually, importantly, and this is another good point for coaching, doing your music, less pain. I can't take all the pain away. I can't take away uncertainty, but I can help you accept uncertainty. But then also I can save you time, because I was thinking, I put a question up, I don't know if anybody answered it, on Discord, like, what are the things that kind of hold you back from doing what you want to do with your music, like making music, practicing, developing yourself, what are the things, and it tends to be, most of the time, and my coaching system, Automatic Music Machine, that is all about saving time. It's about being able to work on multiple projects, be able to track exactly where they are within a creative framework that works. It's been tried and tested time and time again, and tweaked and developed. That's there to save time, and time is the most valuable asset that we have. You know, money comes and goes, doesn't it? But time's not coming back. And, you know, when we're investing our time, especially when we get older, because we've got other commitments to do, you know. And I didn't, you know, like before I got coached, I was this crazy artist. I was like, because before when I had loads of time, it wasn't like an issue. I could just, you know, get up late out of bed, fiddle about, do some music. If it didn't work, didn't matter. Go have something to eat, wander around the shops, come back. You know, I had a life where I could do that, and actually it was a complete waste of time, and I could have just done other things, right? I didn't have to do all of that because I just didn't have any concept of how valuable time was, you know. But when you do realize that, like, suddenly time just disappears, right? Then it's like, you know, things become difficult. And, you know, I had lots of ridiculous beliefs, like, I mean, from that I needed days to produce a track or hours and hours and hours, and that's just not true. What you do need to do to save time is you need to firstly fix what's inside, which is just trust your decision making. That was like one of the things that really helped me, is just like go with the first thought, bang, move on to the next thing, bang. But what I would tend to do is go, here's a kick drum, that's a synth, I know that, but if it was a kick drum, and I would no music, just think that's the wrong kick drum. Or, like, I haven't got any music, so how do I know that's right or wrong? But I would know, apparently, and I would spend hours trying to find the right kick drum. For what? No reason. I should have just picked the first one, built some music around it. The music would have been in sympathy with that kick drum pretty much, and I wouldn't have had to change it. But it's that whole decision. I had to then make the same decision about 100 times to then exhaust myself. And what was all that about? That was about me thinking, right, well, I need to imagine what this song's going to be like in the future. And then everything becomes, like result focused. So I'm just focusing on the result now, and I'm actually completely unaware of what's actually happening in the room, you know, which is like, that's not right, is it? So if you're permanently making music in your head when you're physically in a room trying to make music, that's not what you want to be doing. What you need to be doing is actually noticing what's coming out the speakers, you know. But what we tend to do is listen to our thoughts and overthink things. It's the same when we're, you know, improvising. You know, we've got like a whole, it makes your internal clock go faster. That's fair enough. But also I have fun all the time, and that makes everything go faster. I'll have to check that out, Stelly, but that's interesting. I'm not sure if I'm going to, you know, I'm quite happy with the time frame I'm in. But I can't not have my coffee, my morning coffees out of my thermos flask. And I'll come to the lyric thing in a minute. What was I saying? Yeah, so you're just like this like whole result focus thing. You're in your head. You're not listening to what's going on. We need to be more sort of in the room. Same with improvisation. When we're playing and we're under pressure, that judgmental thinking is in there. And what that can do is we then get on board with those thoughts, you know. And whilst we're on board with those thoughts, and time is flashing past us, you know, with the music as well, and we're not thinking, that's why we make mistakes, because we're not listening to the music anymore. We're distracted with somewhere else. So expanding your technique, yes, back to that. So economy picking, alternate picking, you know, that was the key. And that got me going. And then I had to go through that whole process of doing it, which was, you know, first of all, like playing scales, but just taking fragments of what I was doing and improvising with it and playing with it and trying to have fun with it, and then doing the ridiculously brave move of then trying to do it on lives with like Thomas. But that was, you know, I had to fall down to get the data and make mistakes to work out like where it was going wrong. So I could do these things. I could watch myself back on video under pressure of a live gig, and then that was the benchmark of like where I was. So that would be at the point that I would have to improve from. And the good thing about that is once you brush yourself down, you've got very reliable data to work with, and you can actually see what areas need working, rather than just blanket practicing everything. If you need to learn a technique quick and you want to get it in your playing, right, what you want to do is just install it and start playing what you regularly play with this new technique, or coming up with new ideas using that technique. And that's primarily what I was doing. I mean, I was practicing like scales up and down and stuff like that, but I think the things that really gave me the traction was actually just playing licks and improvising, and then falling off, and then working out where the problems were, because those were the actual problems that existed with my own playing, and at the end of the day, that whole technique had to be installed into what I'm doing, if that makes sense. Right. I'll tell you what, I've actually got my chat down here so I can read things a bit better. Yeah, so Stelly, coffee makes time fly faster than normal. I noticed this when I quit coffee for some years. Do you need words to make a song? No. You can do instrumental ones. Right, Elvish Panther, I like the name. What is the key to really listen and to be on time while practicing your solo along to a track? All right, okay. Well, I think the first thing for me was this whole idea of direct listening, which was something that I'd done for like years and years and years. And I think, when we're playing and we're investing time in our playing, we can get a little bit of an ego. And when I'm talking about ego, what I'm talking about is the concept from In a Game of Music of self one and self two. So if you imagine our musical brains as two compartments, what self one is doing, there'll be people on here that regulars are going, oh, not the self one, self two thing. But it's a great way of explaining, is what self one is the critical self. So that's the ego. So that's the thing saying like, oh, don't bother doing that, play this, or you should know that. And you don't know that, you should practice harder. But it's like having this conversation with you when you actually when you're in a situation and you're improvising, you're trying to focus, And that's what self one does. Self one is there. It's just part of our brain that's there from caveman times, person times, I should say. Let's be right on. And it's there to protect us, really. So it gives us this kind of narrative all the time of like what we should and shouldn't be doing. Now, we don't need that in our creative lives as musicians. It's perfectly safe. Nothing's bad has happened in this studio. A tiger hasn't jumped out of my green wall and tried to attack me or anything like that. So I don't need self one telling me and warning me about potential failures, but that's what it's there, self one. And it's conscious thinking, And what we need to be is we need to be in the subconscious where we're free. And that's where all the best ideas kind of come from. That is where we go into flow, where when we're so, those of you who gig, it's the whole thing of like, you do your first song, you're very aware of the woodenness of that. And then the next thing, after song 2, you're like completely in flow with your band and you're having a great time. And the gig just goes really, really quickly. And at the end of it, so you experience like time dilations. Well, that is one of the experiences from flow, which is, what psychologists describe it. And that's when you're completely embodied in the task, and you feel that you're effortlessly making decisions as well as having that time dilation. So again, talking about time, Stelly, being in flow. And I'm in flow a lot during the day. I'm like after here. I mean, I'm in flow now having this conversation, really. I don't know where all the words are coming from. It's just onto the next thing, But it's important to have these conversations, But yeah, I spend a lot of time, a lot of my work is actually based around improvisation and really conceptual thinking all the time to do with music. And I just love that state. I love kind of being there, and I'll do anything to be there as much as I possibly can. But you're talking about the listening. So what we need to do is we need to practice our listening skills. And I think one of the problem is, for a start, our brains are fried anyway, because we all have like mobile phones and stuff like that, and like nobody can concentrate, can they? I mean, I'm yet to observe my wonderful teenage daughter actually listening to a piece of music in the car from the very start to the end. You know, it seems to be that, you know, put Spotify on and then she's flicking from one track to another, or hearing a bit of a track, and like puts a track on, literally the first 2 seconds play. What do you think of that? Do you like that? And I'm like, oh, we'll just let it play. I need to hear the rest of it. On to the next thing. What do you think of that? No, right, okay. So you know, the attention span people have is very, very short. Gone are the days now, I believe, that, you know, you could put in, get your vinyl, you know, for me, you know, when I'm very, very young, I mean, 7, 8, I used to love Kiss, because they used to wear suits of armour and stuff like that, and I thought, oh, that's cool, and to play guitars. So, you know, I could easily put my live 1 or 2 album on the record player and sit and listen to it. You know, I didn't bother me. I could listen to each song and just completely absorb it. It wasn't a problem. I loved it. I didn't flick about. Not that. I mean, like that now, if you had to go on the way that like young people do these days with Spotify, you'd wear all your records out. Could you imagine what they'd be like? You know, that one, oh, flip it over. Oh, not that record, this one, you know, it's ridiculous. So, you know, the attention span isn't there. So, and I think what we do need to do is we need to work a way out of focusing. So, if you were on the live yesterday, when I started my music session, I did what was called a direct listen. Direct listening. I think it's based on the idea of direct experience, okay, which is about just quietening down the internal voice. Our internal voice when we're listening to our music or playing guitar, okay, is that self one that I'm talking about. Sorry to point. That's self one. And the thing about self one is, again, we don't need that when we're playing, all right? So we need to keep it quiet. So actually 5 minutes meditation, if you can do it, you know, before you do anything creative, is really, really good. I'm quite bad at doing that at the minute. I'll just tend to crash about, but I should do it. And when I do it, I have much better sessions. They just seem to go smoothly, you know, with less resistant. Rude, I know, Josh. Sorry, no pointing. I'll put a signpost on my monitor here. No pointing at the audience. But it is important, you know. So meditation can help quieten the internal voice. That's the first thing. The second thing is try to practice and subscribe. The other thing is, now, hopefully, after having this conversation, those of you who weren't aware about Self One are now aware of Self One. So you know that Self One isn't you. It's just this kind of narrative circuitry thing going on that's like commentary that we don't need. The thing that blew my mind away was actually the subconscious, the self too, when you're in that moment. So if you imagine being in the moment when you're completely unaware of time, unaware of yourself, you're making decisions effortlessly, you're completely embodied in the task that you're doing. When that happens and you're not aware of that voice dictating to you, that is when, you know, I feel that I experience me. And that concept, when it was explained to me, I was like, wow, that's amazing. And that's why I want to be in flow all the time, because, you know, when I leave, when I leave here, and I mean, to a certain degree, there's Self One anyway, because it's kind of like stopping me from doing crazy things like take all my clothes off and start running around the room. You know, like when I leave here and I go off and do all my other stuff, then your behaviour is modified by this Self One, because it's telling you to do and don't do certain things when you're talking to certain people and you're in certain situations, because it's there just giving you the guidelines of keeping you safe, right? I'm not like running about subconsciously thinking, you know, and just, I don't know, running out on the street deciding to do some crazy contemporary dancing and then a forward roll to get into the car to drive somewhere, you know. that's like self one saying right now, Tim, don't do that. Yeah, you need to be somewhere. So what we want to be doing is we want to be in short, we want to be accessing that. So being able to direct listen. So how do we direct listen? Well, on guitar, let's do it. On guitar, there are several things we can do. And one of them is, obviously the direct listening. So I'll focus on different things, right? So I'll focus in on just listening to the pick attack. So just trying to separate the sound of the plectrum away from the actual note of the string. So I'm just focused on attack. And that really draws me into the guitar and really gets me into that place. So little games with that. The other thing is to really feel, to really have a look at the sensory elements of playing guitar. And sometimes I forget to do all of this, but it's absolutely brilliant when you remember to do it. So when you're playing, right, think about, firstly, how does it sound? So that direct listening exercise with the pick is great. But also, how does it look? Okay, we can observe what we're doing. And what we want to do is we just simply want to observe. And this is in the book, The Inner Game of Music, where, you might be playing something and you find it very, very difficult. And you start like locating the area and then getting into this mindset of like, that's where the mistake is. And next time I play it, I'm going to try harder. And that's not what you got to do. What you got to do is play through that mistake, just observing. But you've got to play it like really slow, really fast, and then find a tempo that kind of, it almost works. And all the time you're doing this, you're just moving the tempo about as you're just observing what happens. And actually, it allows your brain to kind of like fix it to a certain degree and not be thinking. It's like when we're thinky, that's where the problems come in. But, you can then analytically work out possible solutions outside of that. So obviously the Troy Grady stuff, if it's a picking problem and there's a synchronization problem, it's very likely going to be alternate picking. So you can observe your alternate picking, observe what the angles are, and that's, the visual, but you're just observing. That's all you're doing. And eventually, like, what you'll find is your playing starts correcting yourself. Because that unconscious, really fast thinking kind of comes in. So that's one thing. So, like, how does it look? And then the other one that I love, which is like the direct listening thing, is like, how do the strings feel under your fingers? Especially under your fingertips. Because we want to have curled fingers. We don't want really flat fingers all the time. So when you're feeling that string vibrate, how far can you feel the vibrations going up your finger? And that becomes a little game. And then I think, like, I want to feel all the vibrations equally vibrating as far up each finger on every note, on every finger, And that's like really great for doing legato. That gives you that smooth legato sound. So that very sort of like direct experience playing. And of course, all of these sensory things do one thing. We become focused on that. And we don't become focused on our thoughts or criticizing our performance at the time, which is what we don't want. Yeah, we just want to deal with kind of all the sensory information that we're experiencing at the time without anything internal. So we have to be aware of kind of what's going on inside us, and I think like there's a lot of talk about the outer game, which is like mechanically fixing things. There's lots that learn these skills, do this, do that technique. And that's all great. All of those resources are kind of there to some degree. I mean, the only problem with like YouTube is like finding the good stuff, right? That's the hard thing, and it's always just better to go to a teacher who's got the lived experience of this, because even though they'll charge you money, right? Okay, and you might pay more, I can guarantee it'll save you time, which is way more. You'll get you'll get more than your money's worth. Okay, it's an investment in yourself. So rather than wasting time guessing and spending hours, weeks, because actually doing something like this is going to cost you years. Months and years. So you want to be careful with your time, and you want to have things under control. So that's why you'd get somebody to show you what to do. Who understands? That's the thing. All right, what am I doing on the chat? Haha, do it. Right, that's about my contemporary dancing to the car, isn't it? Oh God, what was I saying? Where was I up to? I was answering a question, wasn't I? About how to listen. Yes, okay. So quieting our internal thoughts down and using direct like sensory information to do that. That's what to do. Okay, and then once you fix that, then it's all good. Go off and practice. All right. But when you practice, okay, and do music and do anything like that, okay, ideally, what we want, and I'm sure, like, problems are in abundance, right? But what we want to do is we need to, like, firstly identify the higher level problems and where they are. So what are the real problems that you need to deal with? Well, this is where sort of like the playing in front of people and the live performances, like really, really help, because you got nerves and things like that. So you might experience, if you alternate picking the bouncing hand motion and then sweaty hands and then freaking out, right? Well, that's actually easily solved, because that problem is all to do with when you're getting a bouncing motion that's awkward. That's to do with the fact that you've got no picking angles and that you're trying to play with what do you call it, double escape motion for everything, and that's then what happens, because you get like caught and then you get the string hopping thing, which is really bad. Do you have speakers for music production or just headphones? Right, if I'm writing with Wilson in the room, that's a stage name, Wilson, then it's just the speakers are on in the room. We'll do it that way. But actually, yesterday's track, I did some quick levels on it, because it was like getting messy, and I just did that, and the speakers really cranked in the room, and it sounds all right, I might have tweaked a few things. I might have tweaked a few things on the live, but adding the effects and stuff like that, I just did in the room. I did the leveling. Yeah, so it sounded all right, and I think part of that might be to do with the reason it's come out okay is because I've got that green wall now, and that's obviously what's the side of my head look like today? It's not bad. Hair's a bit too far over the headphones in a mullet fashion, but it'll do. Anyway, yeah, but I think that green wall is it's acting as quite a good diffuser actually for sound, so I don't think I wouldn't fully mix anything in here. I would always use the Slate headphones, because they're just absolutely brilliant. I mean, the last mix I did, it's like every time I mix something on these in one of the rooms, it's the Archon studio I really like, and the midfield speakers are the ones that I like, and then just quickly checking on the NS10s and the Oratone in the Slate studio are the main sort of bits that I use for monitoring. And it's like, then when I play it on another system, it's consistent, it sounds good. There's nothing like jumping out of the mix or anything like that. It's all good. Yeah, so it is best to test, and I know like a lot of engineers will, why not start your mix on AirPods, because that's what everybody's going to listen to and all that kind of stuff, and I think that's good, and I do obviously listen to my stuff back on AirPods. It's fine, it's good in the car. Those are the physical places I'll kind of test on, but actually with the Slate Digital, I can test it in multiple studios. I've got like a car emulation, I've got a club emulation, which is really, I love the club thing, because you can tell if you're filling the room with like loads of like unwanted sub or not, and you can really kind of hear in a practical way the relationship between the low end of the kick and the bass, so it's really good with that. And like that's where I really, when I listen to that, I think, all right, one of the real common things that I end up doing is like using kicks that are just too long, and then that's where like hearing stuff back on there really made me go, right, okay, I need to really shorten the kicks, like right down maximum 8th note long, 16th, and then just crank the low end on it, so it's a really good like quick thud, and then you're into the bass, unless you're doing like tech house, in which case you want that rolling kind of bass thing coming off your kick, but not tech house, techno. But that's a different thing altogether. But yeah. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't perform or do anything live, but is it a thing to put music in mono still, depending on the venue? Yeah, definitely. Because like a lot of venues and a lot of places where your music are getting played, or like if you think on just like little Wi-Fi kind of speakery things, right? They're not the best listening environments, and so you've got irregular speakers that you listen out. So you might be sitting in the pub and you might be just have one speaker next to you, something like that, and then that's it. So effectively, that's kind of mono, isn't it? But then you've got like the clubs where a lot of them will just have things in mono as well. So yes, you do need that mono compatibility, unless you're like telling everybody that this isn't for the club or this isn't that. But like as a commercial release, you need to check mono compatibility, and I do that. So when I'm using widening on stuff and I'm starting to get into that, I do check into mono, and I do a lot of the time do all of my initial leveling in mono as well. So it's really great just to hear everything collapsed in one space, so you can hear how the frequencies are competing. And then just getting some clarity like that, just even on your levels, and then expanding it out. And then what I'll do is I'll just, I remember Deadmau5 talking about some time ago. Yeah, so I always check in like mono compatibility, absolutely. But I also know where the compatibility issues are, so I don't have to check as much as I do. I just, I make sure. In fact, the last track that I'm doing there, not that I'm mixing, but I'm aware of sort of like things that are going on there in that mix, and there's things that I do when that are just there already that I don't have to worry about the compatibility in the low end. So, for example, a lot of the bass I use, or the sub bass, I'm just using that TAL SH101. It gets me going for a lot of stuff, right? And to me, that's been the best sort of mono sounding synth that's got like, that just sounds good in the soft synth world, and it just works for me, and it's mono. And you've also got that pitch width modulation on it, which I really, really like, that can give you almost like that super saw feel, but in mono, but doesn't sound phasey. So I really, really like that. Yes, you want to get it sounding, and you can get things sounding good. So that sound, you just got to find the things that sound good. So I like that synth, and literally when you're watching me work with it, I don't even have I don't flick through presets. It's so easy to use. I just make what I need at the time that I need it. It's part of the performance, and that way I'm making a bass in sympathy with whatever the drums and whatever music elements are there. I'm making something anyway that fits, because it's bespoke to that composition. What else was I going to say? Yeah, so that's one thing. And then the other thing is like yesterday, I used like this vaporwave sample kick, and the vibe is great. But obviously, like there's a lot of stereo in that kick drum. It's like and wide, and I thought, well, I like the wideness, but I'm not sure what's going on in the low end, so then I just, Ableton Live mono plugin set to 120 hertz, everything monoed down from 120 hertz does, and kept some of the stereo. In fact, I think I got an EQ out, and I just widened. I used some mid-side stuff and just widened that stereo element, which is another thing, widening sounds. All right. So there are loads of widening plugins, and some of them are good and some of them aren't so good. And a lot of the time when I'm using widening plugins, like there's certain like artifacts and phasiness that kind of comes into a sound. There's only so far you can push them, because the widening a much more undefined area, I think. Okay, so if you're wanting more control, what I like to do is I like to use something like Pro Q3, which is probably my go-to for this. And I'll use that, and what I'll do is I'll flick it into mid-side, and I'll find the frequencies on a sound on the outside that actually, when I boost them, sound good, and they're widening the sound, so I'll do that. And then what I might do is like dip the corresponding frequency in the mono down a little bit to compensate. So you're kind of making your own stereo widener, and you know, it's a lot more kinder to the sound. Yeah, so you know, all that kind of stuff. You know, like the ozone stuff. That's great. I mean, the only thing I don't use it is because it's like adding latency, but that's a good one because you got like 4 bands and you can just mono the low end and then you can slowly widen things. And that used to be, when I was doing dance music, that was my main widening tool that I would master with, you know. Kilohertz for mid-side. So I've got the kilohertz stuff, never used it for mid-side stuff. Don't know why that alarm's going. Sorry, guys. There'll be another one at 7:30. Just warning you. So I've got the kilohertz stuff. Again, they've got like Hass effect and things like that, and I'm wary of like sort of Hass effect stuff. So those of you who don't know what Hass effect is, simply what you're doing is you're making a mono signal stereo by putting like a delay on it, okay? And then what you're doing is you are delaying in time by milliseconds one side of that stereo delay, so the sound goes really, really wide, and we perceive it as in stereo now because the 2 signals from left and right speakers are hitting our ears at different times, something like that. And that works, I think, is, you know, anything from sort of like 3 milliseconds to 33 milliseconds as Hass effect, and then after that it starts becoming a delay. But you can make things sound really, really wide, but the problem is then you don't have any kind of mono compatibility, so you can only use it on a few instruments and stuff like that, but you can get into real sort of like issues if you're using it on like everything. So again, you know, some mid-side stuff is good. I do like the Pro Q3. I mean, the other good thing about the Pro Q3 is you can use the expander. So, you know, if you're putting, one of the tricks is if you put Pro Q3 on all of your mix, right, what you can do is you can use the dynamic side of it in expand and just kind of shelve the outside frequencies and have it expanding whenever the kick and the snare hits on the compressor. So what it'll do is that momentary, when the snare hits, it'll make everything go wide and then down again. So it's a really musical kind of way to widen sounds, and that's a great tip I picked up. I can't remember the guy who I got it off, but oh, that's really cool. Right, yeah, the KS, the kilohertz, yeah. So I've kind of used that. It's okay. I don't like what's happening to the center on it, so I don't use it. I do. The tool I like, there's a stereo widening Hass effect and kind of tone shaping thing called the green Hass effect, and this is by, oh god, I can't remember, Ken Lewis, who's like well, he's been, you know, won zillions of Grammys and all sorts of stuff, right, and worked with everybody, and that's one of his studio tools that he developed, and his one's really, really good because you can widen stuff, give things a bit of tone, and it still preserves the center. It doesn't destroy the sound. Like the last mix I used, so like I used it on like Sharon's verse vocals, so rather than multi-tracking the verse, I wanted like some sort of artificial width, right, and I didn't want to, like, sometimes you can do it with reverb. So I didn't want to do that because then the reverb would sink it back in the mix. I wanted to be up front. So I used that effect just to give this pseudo feeling of a reverb either side of the vocal, but keeping everything up front. So some dude named Hass, yeah, I think it was Dr. Hass, to be fair. So Ozone's good. So like one thing you got to remember, Mac, is that a lot of choices of my plugins, right, So I've been obsessed with my template that I develop over the years through doing a review system, which I need to talk about as well after I've said all of this stuff. And what it is like with that template, I've practiced using it and I keep adding stuff in, but because a lot of my music making is done on a live, I'm pretty brutal with the rule of everything that I use, pretty much without exception, has to be of zero latency. I mean, guitar plugins you can't, but I use Polychrome, which is amazing. It's got the lowest latency of anything ever out there by a zillion times. So apart from that, like everything I use, SSL strip, all of that kind of stuff, state stuff, it's all zero latency stuff when I'm on a live. And then that's like one of the limitations I work with. So what's the best zero latency plugins that are efficient that I can use on a live that will give me a mixed sound while I'm kind of writing, and a lot of this stuff's dialed in already, pretty much. So that's what I do. So I haven't got any delay because I monitor my mic when I'm talking as well through the same project as I'm working on. Yeah, so Polychrome's great, and I really like. I'm really into the the Kiesel Hyper Rig. In fact, oh god, I've just realised. 2 seconds. Where are we? Let's get this right. There we go. I need to get my yeah, I need to be flying the flag. So yes, Kiesel, Hutch, Polychrome DSP. There we go. Yeah, so I really love the Kiesel Hyper Rig. It's great, and it's just got a real amp sound. It's very, very dynamic, and I can really get into it. I love the room thing on it when I'm practicing. I love to have a little bit of room added in there and feel that when I'm playing, I'm in this like space. So it's I can highly recommend it. Obviously, the McLaughlin suite is brilliant as well, and actually, I use that when I'm doing lives with Thomas. That's the only thing that I use, and that's great because you got the shimmer and stuff, and the cleans are very, very clean, and it's got that the presser thing, like compressor, like tone shaping thing at the front end, which is excellent as well. Really, like there's loads of things I really, really like about it, and it's easy to use and intuitive. It's got the signal chains as well, which are like, I don't know fully what's under the hood there, but when you flick onto the different speaker chains, there's always something to fit in your mix, somewhere, which is really good and just sounds great, doesn't it? But yeah, so I'm glad you're like, I mean, it's the best thing out there for me anyway. I'm sure everybody else who uses it thinks the same thing. It's a real battle winner on all areas. And of course, I have the best pitch plugin ever. Right. So where were we? I feel like I haven't fully finished kind of what I was saying. So I hope the question before about listening to music I answered, and but what you want to be doing is internally fixing things and then looking at what's the outer game of things and improving listening. That's where I think it's at, rather than kind of listening to anything to do with self, one, ego. That's the thing with lives. Like, it's great. I get onto these threads and I think, oh, that would make a great YouTube thing. But then other questions come in. I get distracted with them and lose my thread, and then I'm off doing something else. But I'm sure there's probably like loads of edits I could do where I could just pull some stuff out and make some content out of it. Anyway, right. Who Right. Any comments on the experience that you've been through with me this morning? I hope it hasn't been too much of an ordeal. But any sort of other questions? Because it all started about me going on about my playing plateauing. Josh, it's been cool. That's good, because this one updates really quick, and then that one's a lot slower. How do you silence the inner voice? So again, Elvish, silencing the inner voice, I always use sensory things, so like sensory anchor points. So the first thing is, if you remember, listening to the pick attack. Okay. When you play a note, demonstrate. All right. So yeah, when you play a note, what you're listening to is the pick attack, dodgy lead. There we go. So listening to that. And then, of course, there's the things like the spectromorphology of the sound, isn't there? So you could actually pick any of the area of that sound. So you could play a note, and then what you're listening to, I'll just turn the effects off. It's the pick attack and then the decay. And that usually just gets your mind really focused in. Of the sound of what you're doing. The other thing that I've talked about is obviously the tactile feel of it. So one thing I like to think about, especially when I'm under pressure, is just discovering what the guitar wants me to do. Okay, because sometimes we can just go into the guitar and like hammer away at it, and it's all sounding crap. But actually, you want to be feeling the tension of the strings. Okay, so I'm just feeling kind of the pick resting on that string and the tension of it. And then the other time is I'm just feeling how my fingers or the angle of the fingers, and then the sensation of those fingers hitting the strings, like how much of the string is in the center of that finger. And I'm not bothered about speed, I'm just bothered about tone. So now I'm listening. So I'm going between all these senses. Next thing I was mentioning is vibrations. And soon enough, you can hear my playing warming up. So yeah, you're just doing stuff like that, and then playing whatever exercise that you want to do, or solo. I mean, it's really good when you're improvising, doing that kind of stuff. And actually, if you're just sitting and practicing, rather than using a metronome, I'll use a backing track, and I will literally just practice something over it that I've been working on, and then make it just half tempo. Okay, and that's what you're doing. Using that backing track as a metronome. Yeah. So yeah, using your senses. So that kind of makes sense. And then doing a bit of meditation, you know. All right. Does that answer the question, Elvish? Quite like this sound. It's my fusion sound. So you can hear that's the economy picking in action. And I'm digging in quite hard there. But actually, the technique in itself is very, very relaxed. In fact, I've got a really loose grip on this plectrum. And it's all displacement. You can see it's actually more of a pushing technique. I'm kind of pushing and falling all at the same time. Oops. Bit early in the morning, isn't it? Nope, didn't say that lick, did we? Oh, come on, guitar. New lead. Okay. Anyway, come back out of there. Alright, so I'm just trying to think if there's anything else to really conclude. No, but that's it. But actually, for my playing like there, I need to, because I've been doing the very sort of thinky theory side of stuff. I need to have a look at the mechanics of my playing. So that's what I'm going to do this week. So I'll finish on this. Is what we need to do is we need to then work out like what we need to be working on. You know, what are the problems? What actually exists as a problem? What are the problems that are going to give us the most gains that we need to address? So that's the first part of the skill. Now, the way we do this is my review system is wins, problems, and opportunities. So at the minute, when I started off playing, I was a bit rough and I was like, oh God, and I actually feel like inner critic going, what are you doing this for in a clean tone? Like, who's going to hear how crap you are and all this kind of stuff. And I was just ignoring it. And as soon as I did the sensory thing, that went. And you could hear my playing kind of slowly getting up to speed as my mind was locking in. So, I mean, that's a win. Okay, that's a real win, that fact that actually, you know, this stuff that I'm telling you about every time it works, okay? We've seen it happen with our own eyes and I've experienced it and it's wonderful. So that's a win. However, obviously there are some things that need working on. For some reason, I think like I feel a little bit underconfident with my hybrid picking, which is weird because I've had a really good time with hybrid picking. In fact, there's this massive hybrid picking lick I did on that solo video on my channel for the Magnador track, the collaboration, and you know, but then all of a sudden it's like that. It's like that side of the techniques evaporated. So that's something that's what I'm going to look into. So that's the problem. So I need to find out, you know, how I'm going to address this problem, and the way I'm going to address it is like this. And I'm going to go back to the Brett Gorsted book. Now, this was really good in sort of just getting, just stripping things back to the mechanical basics and understanding, rather than playing licks, just understanding exactly what's under the hood when you're hybrid picking. So this is really good, dead simple exercises, and I can do them as micro practices. So literally today, when I'm doing stuff, I can just grab a guitar, a couple of minutes, 1 minute, set a metronome if you want, not totally necessary, tap your foot, and then I'll just pick, you know, one of these exercises, and then I'll just go through it. You know, simple as that. It's great because it does like one finger hybrid picking, so I'll do all of that this week, and then I'll move to two fingers because I occasionally use two as well to do certain stuff. So that's what I'm going to do there. And then I'm going to try and the other thing for the thinky stuff, because I don't want to suddenly stop doing the theoretical side, I'm really into quartal harmony, which sounds really good. So, for example, a little arpeggio you can do is, well, I have a few of them, would be something like this part of it. I mean, loosely speaking, you're stacking fourths. Hold on. It's a bit stretchy, that one. So you're stacking fourths, or even better, so I'm quite into that sound. So that's what I'm going to look into. So that's my two things. We'll do a bit of the quartal harmony. How much time have I got left? Oh, I've got a few more minutes left. Anything else anybody wants to say? And there's also my 2-on-2 stuff as well. With hybrid picking, I've been that was going well, and then it's just like fallen off a cliff. So I need to look at that. Again, picking the guitar up. What it is it's the technique. It's all to do with this hand, isn't it? So there's a particular technique you use, which is actually, you know, you sweep picking two notes, hybrid pick. So you need that bit sort of under your fingers. But I think the weird thing is, because it's across three strings, but I see the pattern as two strings patterns. So you've got like, or cells. So you've got one cell which is like A minor here, and then we've got another cell which is G major, and then we've got an E minor. And we're just stacking these arpeggios. It's great, like, just to have an arpeggio like that, and it takes you into like loads of different phrases. So that's the main thing. It's a great jumping off point. There's another one actually. So 2 note per string, just regular, you know, that's just E minor. But I'm playing E minor with two notes per string. Oops. So that's really handy as well. Kind of doing like little scale runs with that hybrid technique. So the idea is it's meant to sound. Now I can do this when I'm warmed up for ages. So that's hammers only. That's another thing I'm going to practice this week. So to kind of keep that going consistently, we can do it with what it requires is we've got to mimic that fleshy sound of this hand, which means listening to that pick attack and disguising it as if it's like you're using a finger. Which takes a lot of control. So the picking technique's getting a bit wild there. So yeah, and there's tons of these arpeggios. I think this is like where I've got really kind of overwhelmed. So that's a great sound there. Just leads you to so many other places. Just weird to play. So you've got 2 notes, 1 note. What other ones do I have? These are all the really good ones. Yeah, and that's just putting it together, isn't it? So that's practicing my displacement, digging in. Okay. So I'm starting to practice now. Alright, so I think that's me just about done for today. It's been an absolute blast, and thanks for tuning in. And we've got no live tomorrow because I'm coaching tomorrow morning, so I'll see you all Thursday. Alright, Thursday. Also, if you're not subscribed, anybody who's not subscribed to the channel, subscribe. Also join the Discord. Links are all in the description and what have you for this channel. And also, if you're interested in guitar lesson, my email is on the channel as well. You can get my email there. If you're interested in joining one of the coaching groups, it would be brilliant if you could do that. It's $237, 2 hours per week with me in a room with 3 other people. Yeah, $237 a month. And if you don't like it, I'll just give you your money back. That's fine. So it's well worth doing because it'll save you tons of time. You'll make loads of music, even if it's just making backing tracks for you to like shred over. You'll have backing tracks in abundance and it'll all be yours. And you never know, you'll probably want to release one. All right then, I'll see you guys Thursday. Bye.